Today I'm sharing 20 traits of autism that I missed before being diagnosed. So please, stick around. Hello my friends, my name is Claire and this is my channel, Woodshed Theory. Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button, ring the bell. If you're like me and you're a late diagnosed autistic person, or if you suspect that you may be autistic and you're doing some research, there might be some things that you go over in your mind and realize were traits of your autism diagnosis that you missed. So today I'm sharing 20 autism traits that I missed before my autism diagnosis. The usual disclaimer is that I am just one autistic person and I only represent the thoughts and views of one autistic person. We're all different. Also, I'm not a medical professional and this is not meant to be medical advice. If you are interested in a formal diagnosis or you need any medical attention or advice, please contact the appropriate parties. Additionally, if you'd like to do your own research on autistic traits in women and girls, I will link some resources down below. Especially look out down below for the Female and Autism Checklist by Samantha. That's a great resource. Without further ado, here are 20 traits that I missed as an undiagnosed autistic person. Number 1. I was always deemed as highly emotional and sensitive. Much more emotional and sensitive than the other people who were around me, and highly reactive when it came to my emotions. Number 2. I was considered gifted, but I struggled throughout early and later school in different ways to succeed academically. In early school, I was involved in things like speech therapy and reading classes. Another part to this was struggling with test taking and test anxiety throughout my academic career. It didn't matter if I knew the material, being in a room with people taking a test and having to perform under a time limit, disaster. I had many meltdowns during and after tests. Number 3. Getting in trouble for inappropriate social behaviors. I remember once when I was young and at a choir rehearsal, burping during the rehearsal and having to stay afterwards to talk to the choir director and not understanding why it was such a big deal. I have many examples of inappropriate social behaviors that I didn't understand, that I was constantly being called out for or getting in trouble for. Number 4. When I was younger, I got along better with adults than I did with my peers. Many autistic people experience this because sometimes we have a higher level of vocabulary that we like to use, which may seem odd to our peers. Also, adults are more understanding than children, so being around them just makes more sense and feels more welcoming than hanging out with your peers. Number 5. Struggling to keep things to myself, struggling to keep secrets, struggling to gain the trust of my peers. As a undiagnosed autistic person, I really struggled to keep things private. I struggled with the idea of family matters. I struggled with the idea of friends keeping secrets for each other or things private for each other. In my mind, all things were kind of common knowledge, and it actually gave me anxiety to think about having to keep things to myself, which led to people just not sharing anything with me because I couldn't be trusted with information. It sucks, man. That one sucks. Number 6, stimming, but atypical stimming. I, like many girls and women on the spectrum, was able to camouflage my stimming. A lot of it was singing. As you know, if you've been around here, you know that I am a singer and I sing everything. I was also a prolific artist. I was constantly drawing and doodling and wanting to share myself through that. Number 7, weird social behaviors, trying to get close to other people. For example, I would hug every person I met. Didn't matter who they were or what level they were at. I thought that that's just what one did, and I didn't understand those social boundaries. For a while, I would greet people by kissing them on the cheek. and not everybody is okay with them, but I thought that it was a way to show that we were closer and maybe the other person didn't feel so comfortable with that. Number 8, speaking of weird social behaviors, not understanding boundaries. I always struggled with understanding boundaries. I didn't understand why people would have them, and I didn't respect other people's boundaries in the way that I should. If I didn't understand the boundary, then I didn't understand why I had to respect it. So if somebody needed some time alone and I thought that we should be talking, I would continue to talk. Things like that make it really difficult to have and maintain relationships. So I'm glad that I understand and respect boundaries more now. Number 9, being hyper-moral, following all rules, unless there's a caveat of me not agreeing with those rules, and suffering with black and white thinking. As an undiagnosed autistic person, I really liked guidelines, rules, things that made sense to me, and I would be very stringent with following those rules. Unless they didn't make sense to me, and then I would just do my own thing. So I would say I've respected all rules, but that's not really the truth. I would respect any rule to the letter that I thought was right, because autistic people are extremely justice driven, and I was definitely that way, but there was no gray area, and I held other people to my standards when maybe I shouldn't have. Not everyone has to think the same way about everything, and I am not responsible for the behavior of other people. I wish that I knew that then. Number 10, suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder. I am diagnosed with OCD, and OCD is a common comorbidity with autism. And I believe if you look at that list from Samantha Kraft of autistic traits in women, you will see a section that focuses on comorbidities. I know for me, finding out that OCD was a comorbidity for autism really made it clear to me that I was probably on the autism spectrum. Number 11, masking and camouflaging my autism. I was constantly trying to fit in wherever I was at. Well, it's hard to describe because I was in a way friends with a lot of other neurodiverse people. That's where I felt like I fit in, and that's where I was doing whatever I wanted, dressing how I wanted, acting how I wanted. But when I went outside of that bubble, I would do what I needed to do to fit in. Especially in my college years, there was a turning point where I started consciously masking, because I thought to myself, if I'm going to fit in where I want to be right now, I'm going to have to do different. I'm going to have to dress different. I'm going to have to act different and camouflage myself into this situation. Number 12, struggling to make friends with others, especially with neurotypicals, and also struggling to keep friends. When you're an undiagnosed autistic person and you meet a neurotypical person, they can still tell that you're different. Maybe they don't know how you're different, but they can usually still tell that there's something a little bit different about you. I don't think I had as much trouble connecting with or making friendships with people who I now know were probably neurodiverse, but the people who I saw as neurotypical and I wanted to be friends with, I really struggled to start and build and make friendships with them. There was usually something that would happen or not happen, or me not understanding social cues that would make it really almost impossible. Number 13, having intense interests, which I now know were special interests. I would find something that I was very interested in and hyper-focus on it. For example, I have several advanced degrees. I wanted to know everything about a subject, and I did not know that that was a sign of autism in women and girls and everybody. Special interests are a thing. Number 14, how would I say this? I've written weird clothes, but what I want to say is not understanding the social norms of style and fashion, just dressing how I wanted in what I wanted. Or conversely, when I was heavily masking, even if it was not on purpose, dressing in a way that I thought the other people in the group would dress. So copying the dress of the people around me. But yes, if I was dressing in the things that I liked, I would have trouble matching, not wear fashionable clothes. I wore a ton of vintage makeup looks, which were not necessarily the style, just what I liked. I would struggle to dress for the occasion. I was always kind of either overdressed or underdressed. Understanding what people were wearing and what I was supposed to look like, struggled with that. Number 15, having social anxiety and practicing for social events and conversations. I never thought that I had social anxiety because I tended to like to go out and be with people, but I now look back and realize that I did have social anxiety. I would be anxious before the event. I would be anxious to an extent during the event. I would be anxious after the event because I was overthinking how it went. I would script out conversations and plan what I was going to say or go over the conversations afterwards. I thought that everybody did this. I did not realize that people did not do this. Number 16, when I was younger, I would mask all day at school. I'd be as much as I could, a model student. I wasn't perfect, but when I got home, I would have meltdowns at home. And I know that this is something that a lot of autistic people deal with, that their parents deal with. Thank you to my mother. She went through a lot. But my mother would talk to my teachers. They would say what a great student I was, how well behaved I was. When I got home and through the door, I would take that as a safe place to take off the mask, and I would just fall apart. Number 17, being left out of social groups even when the entire group was supposed to be involved. There were times where I would find out that a group was doing something and that I was being left out of it, even though I was supposed to be part of the group, because of many reasons. ... Too different, too dramatic, too everything. So I guess you could count that trait as being rejected in social groups and not understanding why. Like, what was wrong with me? I'm just like everybody else. Great segue into number 18, which is being told that you're too much or that you're too dramatic. I was always being told that I was, too much, too dramatic, too emotional. Now I know that I was just struggling with my sensory needs and that I was autistic. But as an undiagnosed person, people see you differently even though they don't know that you're different. Number 19, behavioral issues during school. You may have remembered that I mentioned that I was usually really good in school, but I also found a way to make school work for me when it wasn't working for me. However, it doesn't mean that things were going perfectly. For example, I would get in trouble for not paying attention. I would be disruptive to the class. My teacher would pull me up to the front of the room and have me sit next to them so that I would pay attention when everyone else got to sit in a normal desk. If I didn't have a perfect grade, I would figure out some way to do extra credit that was usually some sort of art project. So I did have some behavioral issues in school. I won't deny that, but I figured out ways and workarounds to cover them up and work with them. And finally, number 20, struggling to stay in touch with people and to maintain friendships if I wasn't in constant contact with them or seeing them on a regular basis. Kind of that out of sight, out of mind thing. Even when I did develop friendships with people, if I moved away or maybe we weren't in as many classes together in school, or we weren't in any extracurriculars together anymore, I would really struggle to maintain that friendship because I wasn't thinking about the friendship if it wasn't constantly in front of me. So there you have it. There are 20 autism traits that I missed before getting my late autism diagnosis at the age of 31. Probably many more that I can think of. I didn't talk about eye contact or anything like that, so maybe there'll be another list soon. What about you? If you are exploring your possible autism diagnosis, or if you were late diagnosed, what are some of the traits that you missed when you did not know that you were autistic? I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Sharing your experiences helps the whole community. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.